titled this session Organ Maintenance and Care, because it is important for us as church musicians to know a little bit about the instruments that we have to use, whether it's a piano or if it's a pipe organ or even a digital organ. And basically what I have learned in the course of the last, I would say 10 years or so at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, where I'm Associate Director of Music, is that organs are living instruments, and they're made of an amazing number of parts, and that these parts age as we do, and that they need care and maintenance, and that there needs to be a plan, not just at the organist level or pianist level for the instruments, but there also needs to be a plan at the administration level for budgets and things like that. And I'll talk a little more about this. But basically, I will share with you some basic maintenance tips for pipe organs, certainly sustainability, because that is something that I personally had a crash course in as the pipe organ at St. Patrick's Cathedral reached the end of its life this year, actually, at the age of 97 years, without any major renovation throughout its life. And the fact that it actually kept working for 97 years is a testament to the manufacturing of the period, you know, in the 1920s, that they built things technically for 50, 75 years, but because they were so well made, it lasted 97 years. And in fact, technician after technician who came to do an assessment on the organ 3 and 4 years ago just could not believe that some of these chest actions were still clicking and working, you know, when they were clearly well over the edge. But the organ was well maintained throughout the years, and the curator kept it alive and working, and so the administration just did not see the urgency that we, the musicians, kept talking about in this organ needing a complete renovation. So there ended up being 2 independent assessments by 2 different specialists who basically confirmed exactly the same thing in different words, but with the same photographs. And so finally, the administration realized, okay, we must renovate the pipe organ at St. Patrick's. But in the 17 years that I've been at St. Patrick's Cathedral, it was 17 years ago this past Sunday, actually, there were very consistent issues that kept coming up, like ciphers, pipes that keep speaking by themselves, right? Pipes that could not hold tuning, no matter how hard the organ curator kept trying to tune that pipe. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't have a projector.
Okay.
However, if you
send the picture to me, I will show.
yeah,
Oh,
we
yes.
can pass it around.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Visual examples.
Thank you.
Sorry
So
about
maybe I'll do that one piece by piece as I talk about some things. Well, actually, no, maybe I'll just do it now, and then you can. So let's see, how do I share? Some copy. Let's see, AirDrop. I can only send them one at a time. But so I'll keep talking as I share photos for Chutney to show you later. But there were sometimes pipes that would start playing by themselves, right? There would be there would be all kinds of embarrassing things that basically made us organists look like we didn't know what we were doing, and that was just sort of business as usual. And you know, the organ technician kept trying to explain to us some things that went way over our heads, and the reality was that in music schools we're not taught the manufacturing end or the maintenance end of the instruments. I'm sharing these images right now out of sequence, but basically you're looking at the inside of the unrenovated Kilgan pipe organ at St. Patrick's, and you will see some pretty horrifying things at some point, including pipes that are damaged. But these are things that happen sometimes with time, and that unfortunately are unavoidable. There's a third one, I think. There's another image. I'm going to send them to you one by one. So basically, as I was saying, a pipe organ is a complex, albeit a magnificent instrument, and it's often the centerpiece of a church's musical worship. Unlike many other instruments, it is a living entity, as I described, deeply affected by its environment and requiring consistent care to ensure its longevity and reliable performance. And let's see, I'm going to share this next one. So this handout provides essential practical tips for basic maintenance that church staff, volunteers, and even organists or pianists can implement to contribute significantly to the sustainability of their instrument. So as I do in all the talks that I'm giving here, I like to go back to the basics because we then understand what we're talking about in very focused terms. So the single most important, the single most important factor for organ health is a stable environment. Fluctuations in temperature and humidity are the organ's number one enemy. And so, speaking of temperature, let's see. I'm going to share this next one. I'm sorry, I thought I was just going to be able to project images from my phone. It's good to aim for a consistent temperature range. Obviously, you can't always hold a sanctuary, right, at a very stable 70 degrees, right? But ideally, for optimal tuning, optimal maintenance, optimal longevity, organ builders say that ideally the temperature would stay between 68 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit. But obviously that's not possible in a lot of climates. It's always best to avoid extreme swings. So in the winter, if it goes to 20 below, maybe you might have the heat running, keeping the sanctuary heated at 50 degrees in the winter, right, when there's not a service going on. In the summer, if it goes into the hundreds, like in Phoenix, Arizona, right, you might keep the thermostat at 80 or 85, something to at least not let it go into the extremes. I'm going to share the next one. Thank you for doing this, Jen. Rapid heating or cooling can cause wood and metal components to expand or contract. Contract, exactly. Which can lead to cracks, lead to leaks, and also tuning instability. And I had no idea that that's what was at work a lot of the times with the tuning at St. Patrick's. During the day, the cathedral opens the doors to the public, making sure the tourists know that the cathedral is open. And a lot of the cathedral's revenue depends on candle sales, right? Catholics sell candles and they like candles. It's a big thing, and it's actually the cathedral's biggest source of revenue. So whenever they open the doors, right, cold air rushes in the winter and hot air rushes in the summer, and of course hot air rises and goes right into the organ chamber, and these rapid swings in temperature would cause the tuning to falter even as the tuner was tuning. So now that the organ is being renovated, some mechanisms are being built into the organ chambers for when the organ comes back, especially temperature or climate control, that will try to match the temperature of the building inside the chambers to help avoid these swings that have historically affected the tuning. Humidity is also a big concern, and organ builders recommend that the relative humidity of 45 to 55% be maintained. The reason being that if it's too dry, as in below 40% humidity, the wood can shrink or crack. And obviously there's a lot of wood in pipe organs. Some pipes are made of wood, some mechanisms are made of wood, the wind chests are made of wood, the reservoirs are made of wood, even though they're covered in leather. But when wood shrinks or cracks, it's very problematic because it can render the pipe silent. It can also otherwise make a pipe play the wrong pitch and become untunable. And also the leather components of the reservoirs, of the wind chests can crack, and become brittle. And so then forget about even playing anything. On the reverse, when it's too humid, or when the relative humidity is always or consistently above 60%, then the wood can swell. It can, there can also be some sticking parts, so that then you're playing something and pipes stick. And that's not because of, it's because the valve basically stays stuck from the humidity in its very tight compartments. And then, it's very hard to resolve that until it becomes nice and dry again in the environment. But unfortunately also molds can grow. And then rust sometimes also can develop on some pipes. So, that's all very problematic. Some churches have HVAC systems that are modern and fairly efficient, energy efficient, which helps maintain, a certain amount of ventilation and air conditioning in a space. That's especially helpful in humid climates. That is, I may be sending some of them twice too, I don't know, I'm trying not to. It's important to find out if the church can budget for that. The advantages of maintaining a stable climate in a sanctuary while it's not in use is very beneficial, and in the long run will cost less than repairing damage that can occur from humidity or extremely dry weather. So it's a good idea to invest in a reliable thermometer, certainly to maintain, to keep track of the temperature in the sanctuary inside the organ, for example. Also a hygrometer, which measures humidity, and to have that inside the organ or also near the console. And these monitor readings regularly and log them if possible to identify trends. So if every time you're there, you end up noting in a notebook what the temperature is, what the humidity is. It will help also in the maintenance of the organ, and as you talk with an organ tuner or an organ technician, they will say, well, according to your log here, the temperature rises significantly starting in April, and then the humidity comes with it, so maybe you install a dehumidifier, inside the chambers to help, avoid the problems that I mentioned. Did I just send you one? Oh yeah, wow. What you're looking at right now is one of the electric boards. It's sort of like an old telephone switchboard. This is from 1927, back when the organ was first built, and the controls of the console were sent to that switchboard. And oftentimes, some of the electric contacts just exceeded life expectancy, and they no longer worked. And so jumper cables had to be basically put in to try to find new connections between a stop and the corresponding pipes. I mean, that is shocking to see, but because it's behind this beautiful facade, no one knew, right? That definitely happened. Oh, the next one is very dramatic. It's a bent pipe, and it actually bent over time because of extreme heat in the summer that would happen, where the organ chambers would go into the hundreds. And eventually some pipes just, the metal just fatigued and the heat just made it soft and all of that.
Daniel,
Those are, yes,
can I ask a quick question?
yes,
Since it was built in the 20s,
yes.
was that the old style pneumatic, as they called it, organ, or
It was the old style mechanic, the old style electro-pneumatic, yes.
pneumatic? Because years ago, I was organist, playing at First Methodist Lufkin, and they had a 43-rank castle band. And anytime you hit one of the buttons, you could hear it go ka-plunk, just make a big sound every time the organist changed settings.
Sure.
And I'm just wondering if that was still that mechanics as opposed to the newer digital.
Right, well, you're describing also slider chess, when the mechanism is just,
Yeah.
and you have a motor that just like moves, heavy machinery in a way to activate a star. The Kilgan was built in 1927 using a fairly inefficient technology.
Yeah.
Certainly by the 1940s and 50s, already pitman chess were being used, and it was a much more quick, it was a much more rapid and also precise technology. It also was much more space efficient. It didn't require a magnet for each and every valve to open and close. And so it simplified the pneumatics of it all, where you still have air, being involved in the mechanism, but it no longer required such huge springs and magnets to retract. So the technology definitely improved 20 years after this organ was built. And so, in fact, we decided, after talking with several organ builders, to not renovate the wind chests, the original Kilgan wind chests, because they were just not space efficient. And they are very slow to speak. Well, not slow to speak, but they're slow to close, actually. So that actually I can demonstrate why that was a problem, because say I wanted to play something very quick on one note, like, right? That works on a tracker, obviously. It works on modern electro-pneumatics, but it didn't work on the Kilgans of the 1920s, where you would do this, but what you would hear is, right? It just, because the magnet would pull would push the valve away, and that was just an extra step that has been removed since then. So also the Kilgan had a major overcrowding problem inside the chambers, and basically the technology was so bulky that even a tiny little pipe of this big needed this much space underneath for the valve and the magnet. And so we're able to save about 20% of space in the renovation inside the chambers by switching from Kilgan chests to pitman chests, which is a technology that's already now 70 years old.
70?
70 years old, yeah. So Casablanca, Alien Skinner, all these big companies, Austin started using pitman chests, which was basically a better and simpler technology. But this technology still needs maintenance, right? Ongoing maintenance. And I'll get to that a little later. So as you see, what you're seeing now, basically what happens when dust and debris accumulates on the wind chest between the pipes, or some of them sometimes go into the pipes. And that's very detrimental to an organ's delicate internal mechanisms. And so regular, gentle cleaning is crucial. And that is best done by a qualified technician. You can do some of the, general things, but it's very dangerous to go in between pipes and things, because dust could easily fall in between the pipe and the hole and then go inside the wind chest and back, and be extremely problematic and cause a lot of ciphers.
Squirrels also were bad.
Squirrels?
Squirrels that crawled in it and fell into one of the pipes, and the technician had to removed not only the squirrel, but the pipe couldn't be saved after it had fallen in, crawling around the roof or whatever.
Definitely,
Weird organ that I was playing.
animals are not a good thing. Once we found a bird nest in one of our pipes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's equally problematic. So for the console and the pedal board, I recommend weekly or bi-weekly dusting, and you can just gently wipe down the keys, the stop knobs, and the pedal board with a soft, lint-free cloth. And now you can buy these cleaning cloths very inexpensively. They're made of microfiber. They just attract dust very easily. It's sort of like a Swiffer duster, except you can wash it again after use. And these cleaning cloths are really good for that purpose. I definitely recommend avoiding harsh chemicals and polishes or excessive moisture. That's never good for pipe organs. At one point, we were doing a visit of the choir organ that's downstairs in the chancel, and we were giving a guided tour, and suddenly there was a lady, part of the group, that started sprinkling water, and excuse me, what are you doing? Why are you sprinkling water? These are metal pipes. This will corrode. I said, oh, but it's holy water.
Holy water. Holy water.
I'm like, well, thank you for caring. It's still water.
Yes.
Can't do that. So she apologized, and she just didn't realize, but it's not obvious, right? So that's why it's best to talk about all these things, just to avoid misunderstandings and corrosion. So for the exposed pipes, like the facade pipes, like these that you see, I think quarterly or semi-annually, depending on the environment that the organ is in, it's good to carefully dust these pipes with a soft, clean artist's brush or a very gentle duster with a long handle. And Swiffer dusters are excellent for that. With a long handle, you just do what you can reach, and if you can't reach over the top and you see dust, it's okay to take a ladder and maybe have a maintenance person from the church do that, as long as they understand that they shouldn't, use anything else, like anything metallic or anything against the pipes that could somehow compromise the sheen or the integrity of the pipe. Definitely never touch or press the mouths or the tuning sleeves of the pipes, as this can easily put them out of tune. And without specific tools, it can be difficult to then make them tune properly again. Unless, of course, you eventually learn how to tune things yourself and you have the right tools for that. Inside the organ chamber, if it's accessible and it's safe, I think it's good to do annually or whenever advised by your organ builder or organ curator to lightly vacuum the floor of the organ chamber to remove dust and debris. They should use a low suction vacuum cleaner with a brush, a special brush attachment that's very narrow and very long, and that allows them to go between pipes that are very close to one another. And the point is to absorb the dust and lift the dust off of the wind chest so that dust doesn't fall inside the wind chest between the pipe, where the whole pipe, the toe of the pipe is. And never vacuum near or inside wind chests. If you find one that is open, do not attempt to vacuum it. It's a very delicate mechanism. It should only be done by a professional. So yes, and I know sometimes it's challenging to find a professional in your area. I'll talk a little more about that. But it's always good to do a monthly or quarterly visual inspection of the instrument Listen for unusual noises such as hissing, honking, or ciphering pipes. Even if it's a quiet cipher, like even if it doesn't bother anybody and you can keep the box closed, unfortunately it's enclosed and therefore no one notices, that's usually a sign of a problem of some sort and it's worth looking at. But hissing could be a sign of a wind leak. Something somewhere is leaking and it could get worse before it gets better. In fact, it will most likely not get better without some kind of intervention. And it could also come from a reservoir that punctured a hole somehow. And again, these things don't get better. They usually grow worse over time. Look for visible leaks, water stains, signs of rodent activity that happens in organs. And check for any loose or disconnected wires, especially at the console. Those can pose a significant electrocution problem. You never know what the voltage is depending on what that particular cable or wire does. And then note any pipe that isn't speaking consistently, not speaking at all or producing an unusual sound, because that will direct the organ maintenance person to check a few specific things, and they might discover, oh, it said it failed. Did it fail? Did it fail? Let me try that. Yeah, so basically, if you hear something, say something. Write it down, and then when the technician comes, say something. Simple adjustments and troubleshooting, and that's definitely for the organist or the staff. While major repairs require a professional, some minor issues can be addressed by knowledgeable individuals. So one of the very common problems is a cipher. Actually, Joshua, you were talking to me about that earlier, and how you were sent into the organ chamber bravely to pull a pipe when you didn't really quite know how to do that, right?
I had to wear my headphones so that when they play it, when I get close to it, I don't get deaf.
Right, exactly. Wear protection because it can be very loud in there. So if a pipe that sounds continuously without a key being pressed is happening, check first of all, check for debris. Sometimes a small piece of dust or debris is lodged in the key contact or pipe valve. Gently tapping the key on the keyboard or the stop knob might also help dislodge a piece of dust. If that doesn't work, if that fails, then sometimes you may need to go into the organ chamber and pull out the pipe. If you have to do that, be very gentle about it and then put it on its side. Don't leave it somewhat tilted, just put it on its side, somewhere in the chamber where it is safe and is unlikely to get stepped on. More about that later. Also, if a pipe is ciphering persistently, as in it goes away but then it keeps coming back, and you cannot immediately call a technician, you may be able to gently tap the toe of the pipe. So the toe of the pipe is under the mouth of the pipe that goes into the hole of the Winchester. If you tap that toe, it will send vibrations into the pipe, and it might help dislodge something that is affecting the valve underneath. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it works. It worked for me, I would say, about a quarter of the time at St. Patrick's when we had a lot of ciphers, and we had more and more ciphers. I think I've sent you everything, all the photos. I think it might have been, yeah. It might not have been, but it's the last one that I wanted to go through. So yeah, but use extreme caution and always avoid force when you do the tapping thing on the toe of the pipe. These pipes are very delicate. And if you do have to report the problem to a technician, let them know what pipe it is, what stop it is, which node on the compass it is, and then when they can come in, certainly, to look at that. And it's best to report that as soon as possible because it could be part of a bigger problem, that could start involving other pipes near that pipe that's safer. Sticking keys or stop knobs. So ensure that the console area is clean and free of spills. In my experience, the console area is always the last on the cleaning list for the maintenance staff. They will clean everything else, super shiny, the pews, gorgeous and everything, but the organ console area is like this, like no one ever goes there, right? Except the organist. So, sometimes we have had to do the cleaning ourselves, borrow a broom and just, clean and remove dust, because that also helps mitigate some sticky situations where no sticks because the contact has dust on it and it thinks it's activated. In humid conditions, a dehumidifier near the console is usually helpful because dust and humidity turns to glue oftentimes, and over time, it takes a while to do that. But if you maintain the console and the keyboards and the console area generally clean, that will lessen the problem. But the dehumidifier usually helps a lot. And of course, avoid using lubricants except specifically recommended by an organ technician when handling, sensitive areas of the organ. Loose connections. For visible, accessible electrical connections at the console, gently ensure that they are seated properly. Always power off the organ before handling any electrical components. Some things are always live, but usually when you power off the console, everything that you see at least powers off as well. And that's the number one thing to do before you go diagnosing and touching cables or wires. So the crucial role of a professional organ builder technician. Basic maintenance by the church staff is vital, but it is not a substitute for professional organ building care. Schedule service. I think it's good to aim for at least annual, but better yet, biannual professional tuning and maintenance visits. And during these visits, the technician will thoroughly clean internal components, address minor repairs and adjustments, regulate and tune pipes, inspect for wear and tear, identifying potential problems before they become major issues, and assess the overall health of the instrument. So when you establish a relationship with an organ technician, if provided you can find one, it's good to agree upon what they're going to do in these annual visits or semi-annual visits, and maybe they'll do more things on the annual visit and fewer things on the semi-annual visit. But make sure that it includes all of these checks that help prevent, major issues. And frankly, a bona fide, a qualified, bona fide organ technician will propose, reasonable maintenance plans for an instrument. And if they just say, I'll just come and tune once a year, that is a red flag. An organ needs more than just a tuning. It needs cleaning, it needs a thorough checkup, basically, like we do, to make sure that nothing is going unnoticed.
So Daniel, on this annual or biannual professional technician coming out to tune and whatnot, like I say, of course, before Christmas, or in the cold weather versus the warmer weather, twice a year preferably, they don't clean or do any of this maintenance that we've been talking about as far as cleaning or anything that needs to be cleaned internally?
So it depends on the size of the instrument, but some cleaning should happen. And if they don't propose it because they understand that you're dealing with a shoestring budget or other kind of constraint, maybe ask about it. But technically, the whole organ should be cleaned once through every year, right? So maybe when they do the annual visit, they clean half of the organ, and then at the semi-annual visit, they clean the other half, right? But at least least the organ should be cleaned in some way. And it doesn't, once it's done annually, it doesn't take that much time. It might take, depending on the size of the organ, it might take 1 hour per division, but that would save, that would save a lot of trouble, and frankly, it will lengthen the investment that the church is doing into the instrument. It will postpone the need for a renovation or major repairs, and it will also make the occurrence of ciphers much less frequent. So yeah, I would definitely bring up cleaning if the organ technician doesn't, and they would perhaps need to see the instrument to really propose something very specific, but that should definitely be an annual exercise. Major repairs and rebuilding. So only a qualified organ builder should undertake significant repairs, such as re-leathering or a rebuilding project. There are some technicians out there who work by themselves, have a very small shop, and they mostly do tunings and they do very few little repairs. If they don't have a large shop, and if they are not used to building instruments, they certainly shouldn't rebuild an instrument. So, pick wisely, get more than one opinion if you can, only award a project like that to a qualified builder who builds instruments, who knows how to do that. And communication is key. Establishing a good relationship with your organ builder will result in an organ that plays well, is in tune, and performs well and gives you peace of mind. Organ builders are your best resource for advice and long-term care. And then the final point I want to make is the long-term sustainability plan for the organ. Budgeting is a huge thing. It's important for a church to allocate funds in its budget to specifically address organ maintenance and future repairs. So it's basically like a condo building, where they start planning, okay, in 10 years we're going to need to replace the boiler, right? We're going to need to replace the roof in 20 years. We're going to, these things. Get an organ builder to give you a realistic capital plan, basically, for the organ. Have him look and give you an assessment. Okay, I think the reservoir is good, the leather still has another 25 years, all that. And tell the people in charge of the money at your church, this is what the assessment is, and this is what they project will be needed in 25 years. Now, they might not do anything about it. They might decide to earmark funds for more urgent, more visible, needs, but do talk about it. Make sure that it is discussed. Proactive budgeting prevents costly emergencies. Education. I think we, as church musicians, have to educate the leadership and the worship teams and the congregation about the organ's value and the importance of its care. If people know that an organ actually has a certain life expectancy, and they appreciate it and they love what you do with it, the pleasure that you give them through organ music or a beautiful piano, right? They're more likely to give and want the church leadership to earmark funds for the instrument maintenance. And documentation. So that's something that I learned over the years is extremely important, not just for the builder, but for everyone. It's to keep a log of the maintenance states, repairs, and any unusual observations. Every time something wrong happens with the organ, document it. And so what we used to do years ago is have a book in which we wrote everything down. And when the organ curator would come, he would look at the book, and then he would say, okay, and then put a check mark. And then one day, the cleaning team had a staff overhaul, and the new guys just didn't know. They saw that book and they were like, look at this old book, and they just tossed it. And we therefore lost the whole history. We lost 15 years of history, of maintenance records, of all of that, and we were crushed. And so, since we were already using Google Docs internally in the music department for daily programs, Sunday programs, to work on certain collaborative projects with other teams in the cathedral, we decided to create a spreadsheet that lives in Google Drive and that we can all access from our phones, from our tablets, from our computers. And we log everything now electronically, and we share that spreadsheet with the organ builder, who can 24/7 check and see what we added and determine whether it's an emergency or it can wait until the next scheduled maintenance call. That has proven to be an invaluable tool. And in fact, before the renovation started, the spreadsheet was getting quite long because of all the end-of-life issues the organ was experiencing. And we played the organ until it became absolutely unplayable, and it was back in early April, right after Easter, so it was not early April. Somehow in my mind I have April 23rd. It was the week after Easter Sunday. The organ just couldn't play anymore. It was just becoming so stressful. So many notes would just keep sticking, valves would just refuse to close, and things like that. And we realized, okay, well, fortunately, the renovation is starting now, and we're making do with just the chancel organ right now, which was renovated first. And it's so nice to have nothing to add to the spreadsheet anymore. But documenting, in other words, my point is essential, and not only for you, but also it provides a valuable history for future technicians, right? Some technicians retire, organ builders retire, and then sometimes you have to go with a new organ technician, and that information of the history is invaluable to them. So for that reason, and there's nothing wrong with the notebook as long as no one tosses it, right? So whichever format or support makes sense to you, do it. And then also succession planning is a good idea, by which I mean, ensure that the knowledge about the organ's specific needs and its service history is passed on to new staff at the church or volunteers, so that they know it's a living instrument and that its health is fragile, and like everything else, it needs awareness and attention. So to conclude, I invite you to think of it as fostering a partnership for the organs and the piano's preservation. Caring for a pipe organ is a shared responsibility. We as church musicians can only do so much. We are in control of only so much. And so by implementing the basic maintenance tips that I shared with you, understanding the importance of the environment's control, and partnering with a skilled professional organ builder, your church can ensure the sustainability and beautiful voice of its pipe organ for generations to come. So now I'd like to see if any of you have questions. I know this gentleman here has already expressed to me his experience, which is it's very hard to find an organ technician to come. And where is your church?
80 miles south between here and Houston, Texas A&M University, Bryan College Station.
Yeah.
And the Dallas technician that installed the organ with his dad, I've tried to get him to come since March 1st. He still hasn't come. I gave up on him and tapped a friend out of the San Antonio, Austin district that is also representing Rogers. And he was very helpful, but only to the point that he couldn't come out physically, so he immediately did like a 4-hour FaceTime call with me at the console and doing everything he told me to do. And, and it improved it a lot until my phone died. But anyway, I've been trying to get him back out there to finish the job, and he told me after repeated times that I've contacted him, when he told me I'll always respond to my customers, and he wasn't, so he got insensitive to the fact that I guess I kept bugging him 3 or 4 times, including seat I'm going to text to him about the points 1, 2, 3, or whatever that need to still be addressed. And he finally says, I can't get to you till September or October. And this has been since March 1st starting. So I've become an organ shade tree mechanic, as I call it, because I've had to do everything I can do just from reading the directions, instructions. For example, it won't return to its default on the crescendo pedal. It initially, and what caused it for me to change it at all, it brought the harp on, after one of the soft sounds of flutes or whatever. And all of a sudden I hear a clunk, when you're opening the crescendo pedal and the harp comes on. He admitted, no, that shouldn't be there. So, but once I deleted that from the menu of coming on, then anyway, bottom line, it would not return back to its factory defaults. So it would have a normal progression of adding stops like it's supposed to. And then the antiphonal speakers, that we had 2 sets over each of the exits there, were, anytime I used them, were not balanced with the front main speakers. So if I turned them on, they were very loud in the back, and it reduced the volume of the front main speakers. So my antiphonals are useless. I don't use them at all, besides the people complaining that the audio is too loud, which of course organs don't ever hear that. But anyway, and then it needs to be revoiced. I've revoiced it the best I could. And my music minister and others in the choir and everybody says, well, it sure sounds a lot better than it was sounding. But I'm not a professional. I think Rogers needs some new organ technicians. And they have too much work to do because they can't get to me in 9 months.
So, but is this technician with Rogers? Someone who's recommended? Is the technician in question recommended by Rogers?
Yes, he's the factory technician out of Dallas here, Dallas suburb, that installed it. His dad installed it back in 2012.
Right. Oh,
and I would say it's a pretty major investment. It wasn't $1 million like real pipe organs down the road from us, but it was, back then, $125,000, a 4-manual. And,
so
if you want future business, you ought to take care of your customers now, because we're not a small church.
if that technician is not responsive or not giving you timely responses, I think involving Rogers leadership, escalating into them.
And that's why I went to the guy in the neighboring area, which they're kind of a feud going on, that they're not supposed to touch each other's equipment, and yet I can't get either one to come out and fix it now. The guy in Dallas says, if you have the guy in San Antonio come out, I'll never come fix it again. Oh, that's funny. You hadn't come out yet since March.
Well, and that's why it's good to, when you meet someone who's reliable, to enter into a formal contractual agreement with that person, where there is a written.
I can see that on pipe organs.
But I think for example, voicing in a digital organ is extremely important to be voiced on site by someone who knows how to do it and who can do it quickly and appropriately, involving the church's musician as well. And that needs to be negotiated, and it helps to have a contract. Not that things don't go wrong ever, even if there is a contract, but it helps create a sense of accountability. You had a question?
Just wondering, when you have had extra funds, not just for repairs, but like to make additions to the organ, what kind of additions have you made to your organs? What's your first priority?
So I would say I would only make an addition to an organ if it was prepared for certain things that were not made when the organ was installed. I caution personally against additions because it might distort the original intent of the builders, the original intent on the builder's part for that instrument. It might distort the aesthetic that was originally produced. If you feel though that something is lacking, like such as a 32-foot foundation stop in the pedal that would add nice gravitas, something like that, that's oftentimes a useful addition. And now you can usually, you don't have to add pipes for that. At that pitch level, there are excellent digital 32-foot stops that can be added and that sound just as real as pipes. It all depends on the instrument and what's lacking in it.
Have you ever done any upgrades to your organs, like specific examples
I'm sorry.
of organs that you've worked on? Have you,
And what was the question?
I guess, have you made any big changes to your
Well,
current organ?
Yeah, I mean, at St. Patrick's, we are with the renovated organ, the gallery and the nave organs that are currently being renovated. The chancel organ was already renovated, and actually we did quite a lot of changes to it, back to its original configuration, actually. We were not looking to do a restoration, as in restoring it to its factory default. We weren't trying to do that because it's just not possible. You know, even restoring the original voicing, none of us was there 100 years ago to really hear it. The earliest recordings from 1958, there is a video on YouTube from the 1940s, but the audio quality is terrible. So, you know, we did the best that we could with the research that we could do. We basically reconfigured the organ inside to make it project better, the way it actually was originally designed. In 1940, 13 years after its installation, it was redesigned inside to project as poorly as possible. Soundproofing panels were installed inside the organ to absorb sound. We have no idea what happened. We could only surmise that the Archbishop at the time just didn't like the organ and wanted it to be softened, you know, or didn't like the way the organist played, you know, and maybe it could be that he registered too bright or too loud, we don't know. But anyway, we undid that, and thanks to archival resources that we had, and we were able to do that. With the gallery organ and the nave organ that are being renovated, and by the way, all three organs were designed to play together in a surround sound set up by St. Patrick. So it's really good. I call it the organ, that is basically an organ spread over 3 locations at St. Patrick's. We are making a few changes because in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, clearly our predecessors set out to Frenchify the organ. You know, they decided to take all the reeds that were nice and dark, very English in nature, and make them brighter and more aggressive and louder, very much like a French Romantic organ. So clearly they had that French Romantic sound in mind. And they also, in the 70s, were influenced by the Neo-Baroque movement that meant that you took all your nice, soft, delicate mixtures and made them bright and strident. And unfortunately, in doing that, they ended up putting them on new chests, non-Kilgan chests that spoke faster and closed faster. So these mixtures that they ended up putting in the 70s didn't speak at the same time as the rest of the texture, and it basically made them unusable. So it was such a waste of whatever. I think that I respect the idea because a lot of people wanted those neo-Baroque sounds, and I can't judge them for that. That was the trend at the time. That was the fashion, but it just didn't work, you know. And so we're undoing that, and we're not again trying to go back to 1927. We're keeping, you know, the effort to make the organ more French sounding, but we're also now restoring some of the reeds back to their English original, so that we can still play French music, but we could also play English music and American symphonic music as well. So we're adding, however, a cornet to the organ, which for some reason, in their efforts to Frenchify the Kilgan, they did not install a cornet, which is a very useful stop. On this organ, for those of you who don't know necessarily offhand what a cornet is, it basically sounds like this. Right, it's a collection of pitches at 8 foot, 4 foot, 2 2/3, 2 foot, and 1 3/5. And that combination, it just wasn't there. And so we don't know why maybe they only cared about French Romantic music and not so much about French Baroque music. However, these pitches are very useful even in a Romantic instrument. So we convinced the trustees to to shell out $63,000 for a new stop that the organ has never had. And I think they understand that we will be using it a lot. It's very useful in a hymn introduction to a gentler hymn, not a strong hymn with like the national anthem or anything like that. But the cornet is very useful and it will be used a lot. And it is part of that interest that our predecessors had to Frenchify the organ, but they stopped short of that. Also, and that's very exciting for me personally as a musician born and raised in France, but the organ currently had a horizontal chamade trumpet, very loud horn, that you could hear probably all the way here from New York. It was unusable at the console. It was just so loud. And it was installed in the 70s as well. And it was not original. And I think it was installed in response to St. John the Divine, the Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine in Upper Manhattan, installing its fantastic chamade trumpets. So St. Patrick's obviously decided, you know what, so can we. So they it's just unusable and it's just not beautiful. And there are other trumpets on the organ that do that job beautifully to introduce a national anthem with great gusto and incredible energy. So we are actually transferring that chamade to the solo division of the Kilgan organ. It was actually the original tuba of the organ. So it's going back into the solo division as the tuba. And Casavant, the Casaband, as we are used to saying, is building a new set of French romantic chamades for us in the style of Cavaillé-Coll. But we cannot modify the case because it is protected as a historic monument. So the chamades cannot be horizontal, sticking out of the facade. So they're going to be vertical and hooded, and they're going to be right behind the facade pipes. And the gains that we're making with having new chests, Pittman chests, the 25% gain that we're making in space makes room for those new chamades. And they're going to be at 16, 8, and 4 foot pitch. So it's going to be something else. But it's going to be usable, and it's going to be, not too loud, and it's going to have that French buzz. So I know this is not the short answer you were hoping for, but it is. But in terms of, if you ever have money to do improvements to an organ, I would probably invest in a 32 that, won't change the personality of the instrument. Maybe if you need a reed that will help you introduce something, a festival trumpet of some kind. Those are nice. If you don't have a harmonic flute, maybe adding that will not, again, alter the personality of the instrument. So.
I would like to make my swell box open and close is like very little change in dynamics.
Oh.
That's the most annoying thing about
Okay.
my organ.
So then what I would talk to someone about is thickening the wood of the shades, potentially even thickening the entire chamber, swell chamber, so that it is, when it's closed, it really becomes very buoyant.
Yeah.
But you can still have full swell and all that. That way when you open, it's very effective. But those shades need to be thicker, and it would be an investment in lumber, basically. And it should be done by a organ builder.
Yeah.
Someone who can really do the right job. Yes?
When will the new organ, the renovated organ at St. Patrick's be premiered?
Premiered, that's not known. The trucks are coming back from Canada on April 27th, 2027. So less than 2 years from now. And so I imagine that the installation will be complete by August, July, August. That's the current estimate. And then the voicing will probably be complete in time for Christmas 2027. There will probably be a rededication of the instrument, multiple rededicatory concerts, and we're talking about some ideas about that. We might collaborate with the New York Philharmonic for concert. I think the regular Sunday concerts will probably resume sometime in 2028. So, yeah, very, very exciting. Yeah. All right. Oh, yes.
When do we need to change console?
Excuse me?
When do we need to change the console?
Well, that is up to the builder. Basically, when you do a renovation, when do you need to change the console?
Yeah, this is our organist keep asking me to. We actually need a new console, but I don't know exactly what we need.
Okay. Well, it would be good to maybe find out. It could also be that, frankly, the keyboards, the actions, have become uneven. You know, the springs don't react the same.
I think the manual actually works fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe the sound, the board behind inside the console, maybe we have some issue of the board, the electrical board.
Oh.
That,
So maybe electrical work.
yeah.
Needed. Yeah. I would talk to an organ builder about that, and they could do, an assessment and some recommendations on upgrades or renovation of the insides. It all depends on what the issue is, really.
I see.
Yeah, I would ask a professional to come evaluate.
Yeah.
Maybe the organist can explain what he's encountering in terms of issues.
Daniel, what is the builder's name that's rebuilding this organ for y'all?
It's Casavant.
It is Casavant.
Casavant in Canada. Yeah,
And-
Casavant, I think.
Casavant.
Casavant.
If you're French or if you're just Texan, But yeah, it was a 43 rank 3 manual Casavant in Lufkin First Methodist. Years ago, they had a 10 rank Austin also in the chapel they added. But how many ranks of pipes will this organ have when it's complete there at St. Patrick's?
I think around 157, 158, maybe 160.
More than is needed.
But we've been confused about the exact number of ranks actually, and I don't have.
Yeah.
We know as of the removal of the organ exactly what the number was. There were several people with several different opinions about how many ranks there were at St. Patrick's, believe it or not. Also, during the removal, we discovered that the original third diapason on the grate, which we thought had been long lost, was actually still standing and had been moved to the choir, to a wind chest in the choir, but not wired, just sitting there. And so it was never accounted for in the number of ranks that we had because it wasn't playing, but it was there and it's still intact in its original form. So we are going to reintegrate that as well. So I haven't looked yet at the final count of everything, but Kazama has documented everything and counted everything, and but it'll be between 155 and 160 ranks.
And is it still a 3 manual, 3 keyboard?
It's 5 keyboards.
5.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have 2 identical consoles with 5 keyboards each kind of a one.
Like Diane Wish used to play on the same in Florida.
Right. Choral bridge.
I got to play on 5 or 10 minutes while Dr. Kennedy
Oh, wow.
played before they had to wait and come in.
All right. Any last questions or no? All right. Well, thank you so much for being here.